Chapter 36. Unbroken Faith. We left poor Enid Chichester in a faint in the armchair, into which she had fallen on discovering who the bridegroom was, and there she had remained unnoticed and uncared for until the excitement had somewhat subsided, until every smuggler was firmly bound and put under close and watchful guard. Then some of her fair sisters had discovered her and immediately set about her restoration. For a long time, the efforts of her friends were unsuccessful, but, at last, with a heavy sigh, she opened her eyes and gazed wonderingly around her. Soon she remembered where she was, why she was there, and what had happened, that he who had promised to devote himself to the work of liberating her, he upon whom she had placed her whole dependence, her whole faith and trust, was married to another, worse than that. Was the wretch who had heartlessly forced the bonds of wedlock upon an unwilling bride, and with a moan of pain she covered her beautiful face with her hands. "What is it, Enid, what made you faint?" gently asked one of her friends. She started as if suddenly smitten with a rod, at the question. Disagreeable as the fact might be, she realized that her heart had gone out to this same sinful and erring man, with all its freshness and wealth of affection. In plain words, that she loved him, in spite of the hideous and glaring colors in which he now stood revealed. But she would die before she would ever let anyone suspect the truth. So, setting her little teeth firmly together, and tossing her head defiantly, she said, in reply to the query of her friend, "Oh, nothing but a nervous shock, from which I shall soon recover." Then, anxious to turn the conversation from herself, she added, "But what does all this mean, and what makes you all look so happy?" They explained everything to her, while she listened, laughing and crying at the same time, with joy that once more they would all see home and friends. Finally, when Enid grew more calm, they all arose and joined the group where such interesting revelations were being made, and where Rose Ellerton had just thrown herself at the feet of her husband. They listened with intense interest to the story of the long-parted husband and wife, and Enid began to feel her heart warming toward Ralph again when she heard how he had been deprived of a mother's influence all his life, and in the clutches of his vile uncle. Then, when he so humbly begged forgiveness, her warm heart grew sympathetic, and poor little Enid's defiance and pride all melted away like the dew before the sun, and bowing her pretty head, she sobbed out her pity and her love, pity for the painful remorse he felt, and the trial he did not spare himself in confessing it, and love for the good that her tender, womanly heart told her was in him. Ralph had seen her tears, and half interpreting their cause, his heart bounded, and when his mother had finished her story, and his father had gone to seek the Italians, he arose, and approached her. "Miss Chichester, why do you weep?" he asked, gently. She started violently at the sound of his voice, and then looked up at him. The instant their eyes met both colored deeply, and the young girl drooped her gaze, as she replied, "Who could help weeping at all this happiness and good that has come so unexpectedly? I know strange things have developed themselves here tonight, but," he added, with a touch of sadness in his voice, "do you remember what you promised me this morning?" "Yes, I do remember. I have come to release you from that pledge. You must have seen, ere this, that I am unworthy to perform such a duty, and though I know you have no friends to care for you, yet knowing what you now do of me, I feel I have no right to expect you to trust in me. But I will find someone who will care for you faithfully." His voice was full of regret and self-depreciation, and the sound of it brought the tears again to the fair girl's eyes. But she hastily lifted her head, and glanced half defiantly at him, as if daring him to accuse her of being unmaidenly in what she was about to say, and replied, "I do not desire to be released from my promise." "Miss Chichester, surely you do not mean it," he said, eagerly, his whole face lighting brilliantly. "Yes, Mr. Ellerton, I do. And can you trust me still, after knowing what you do?" "I can. Do you not remember what I said this morning, that you might do something, impelled by the force of circumstances, that would merit my severest censure, but that even then I should feel there were goodness and truth in you? My words have proved true. There is much of good in you. I feel that you were intended for a noble man, and had the influences around you been pure, you would never have been led into such evil ways. I feel that the words you only a short time since uttered were sincere, and I have no wish to retract anything that I have pledged, least of all my faith in you." Ralph gazed at her in wondering admiration. "I cannot tell you, Miss Chichester," he said, "how deeply grateful I am for your confidence in me. Your words move me more than I can express, they give me new courage, they inspire me with a blessed hope."